All right, everyone. Welcome back to DevCon 2020. It's my great pleasure to introduce really a good friend of ArcBlock and a true thought leader at the decentralized application space who's providing guidance and expertise across industries such as edge computing, decentralized apps, and whatnot. Let me introduce to you Kyle Ellicott, the co-founder of Topio Networks.
Let's dive into one of my favorite and most exciting areas of technology right now, and that is the world of decentralization. And so I really want to talk and kick things off with this slide. And this slide to me is not just a combination of all the work that I've done over the past almost 2 years now, researching the ever-changing second-by-second, minute-by-minute ecosystem that is blockchain. But I think it provides a good roadmap to what you're hearing today at DevCon, but just in general, what we're going to be talking about for the next bit. And so at the end of 2018, and just after the big ICO boom of 2017 and kind of the dust settling of what is blockchain, where does this play a role in my world, where does this play a role in my life, I decided to throw myself in and start researching and building what you're seeing here are taxonomies and really starting to understand how to navigate this industry and be able to provide that as a roadmap back to you. And so in the end of 2018, I researched about 12 to 1,500 different companies around the world and built the very first taxonomy of how I viewed and how the landscape was being portrayed. And that's here in the upper left-hand corner, you see came out to be about 380 companies that were real, in market, active, and working at the infrastructure layer of blockchain. And so to me, this was the foundation that we're building upon today here in 2020 and beyond. And as you can see, quarter by quarter, we continue this research and continue to see new trends. So in the next quarter, in the first half of 2019, that number grew almost by an additional 100 plus companies. And this was when the enterprise started entering it in. We saw more enterprise take leadership and take active roles in projects and not just putting out press releases, which was exciting momentum to see in this early days of 2019. And later half of 2019, we started to see the emergence of things like decentralized finance, decentralized applications. Now we're starting to see these use cases come to life, whereas before it was just pieces of infrastructure. Now infrastructure is exploring. And then in Q4 2019, so almost a year after we began this, saw this explosion. The landscape itself almost doubled in size. We saw more venture funds starting to rise and start to invest in areas, saw more investors coming to the scene. We saw consortiums being created, which are groups and areas of collaboration. More pieces of this landscape started to come together. And to me, as I label it, please take your seats, this was the rocket ship. This is when we were about to go and really start to see this industry take off in ways that we could only imagine for not just the year, but the decades ahead. At the same time, one of the conversations that continued to rise was, well, this is all great, but how do I build something with it? How do I build an application? What is a decentralized application? And so in my research, I found that the stack for building a decentralized application is not so traditional as it has been in the early days of Web 2.0, so things like web applications and social networking, to then mobile. No, decentralized applications have all kinds of different shapes and routes to go. And so I began researching decentralized applications and built a map, which I'll show you the latest version of, to really guide you through the process and all the pieces you need to build a decentralized app. So your new technology stack. And then in Q1 2020, I mean, it just got exciting. And this is when the new era mixed with decentralized applications really began. We saw over almost 1,000 companies enter this space, all that have been reviewed, all that are building something at the infrastructure level or investing into the ecosystem itself. So with that, let's dive further in. Now, oops, jumped ahead for a moment. But one key point I want to get across is, everyone talks about blockchain that it hasn't had much momentum. There hasn't been too many things. We've had cryptocurrencies, we've had digital currencies, we've had all these pieces, but where are we with all this? Well, I think it's important to remember that, Rome was not built in a day. The internet was not built in a day. Applications were not built in a day. These type of big, massive movements, these big infrastructural changes, these big changes into the way that we do business and that are integrated into our lives take time. And we're not talking 3 to 5 to 7 years, we're talking decades. And so it's important to look at the timeline, where we've come from and further where we are today. Right, in 2008, we saw the initial white paper released by Satoshi Nakamoto talking about this peer-to-peer electronic cash system called Bitcoin. So that was really the entrance of this world of blockchain on its main level, as we refer to it as today. Just a few months afterwards, the very first, or the Genesis block, was actually mined on Bitcoin. So 2008, 2009 began this journey of just more than a decade of where we are today. But at the application layer, as people, and we're going to talk about today, applications are still very new when it comes to the world of decentralization and blockchain. It wasn't until 2013, that the general theory of decentralized apps, or Dapps, was released. And this was a framework, a guide, a roadmap, the very first that was put out by a technologist named David Johnson and a group of over 8 different other technologists to set out what we would all use as the foundation for building apps. This is how they would operate, how they were classified, the best practices. Really, again, laying those early roadblocks for us to build applications. And then 2017 to 2019, there was a lot of testing, a lot of early development, a lot of breaking, which we're going to talk about, a lot of use cases or not use cases that were testing things out, along with scalability to help find the holes in these new applications to where we are today and the decades ahead. And so welcome to the stack. And this is the second version, or the Q2, so quarter 2 2020 edition of the Decentralized Application Stack. And we're going to go through this from the bottom, so left to right. And all of these pieces are what you need, whether you want to build a DApp, as we'll refer to it going on, from beginning to end, or the pieces that you may want to leverage if, in some case, your application may not fully require every piece of this. Or if you're looking at leveraging blockchain or distributed components in some way, this will give you that guide as to who the players are, where you should be paying attention to, and where the opportunities are as well. And before we further jump in, I love talking about this, capital. So where's the investment going? When you look at blockchain as a whole, the bigger picture, right, the bigger industry, we're seeing over 23, almost $25 billion that's been invested in the blockchain ecosystem. Almost 10 billion of that is invested in the infrastructure of decentralized applications. $10 billion, which is amazing. And when you look at blockchain, we actually see this cycle of every 3 years, a rise and then a fall, a rise and a fall. But when you look at decentralized apps, what you notice is it's a very slow, moderate uptick right until that 2016, 2017, where we start to skyrocket. And we see all this money, all this capital poured in to these infrastructure projects to really help figure things out and lay, again, that second layer of framework that we started in 2013 to the future of applications. So already here in 2020, we're on our way to 400 million and growing, $400 million invested in this era. And the leading investors, so if you're raising, you're building, it's key to know who these 5 are, because they're also very similar to the 5 leading investors that invest in blockchain companies as a whole. And that's DCG, Digital Currency Group. They are leading the pack with over 20 investments in the decentralized application space, followed by Andreessen Horowitz, or A16, Blockchain Capital, Pantera, and Polychain Capital as well. And so, as I mentioned, we've seen a lot of capital. This is just a short list of some of the investments already in 2020, including some early acquisitions as well. And we're going to go through each and every one of these companies, but just to highlight a few, if you look at Near Protocol raised just over $20 million in May. This was found a huge amount of news across the ecosystem, as they were and are a big piece of the infrastructure that plays throughout decentralized applications. Beyond Identity, focused in an area around, we're going to talk a lot about today, decentralized identity. One of my big focuses, and I think one of the rising categories of opportunity in this era and landscape as well. And Lightning Labs in February raised just over $10 million. Lightning Labs, if you take a look at this company, and we're going to talk more about it, plays a very key role into the scalability and the performance of your applications. So, breaking down, this is the bottom left. So this is where we start. This is the infrastructure layer. There's over 100 companies in this. We've seen almost $6 billion put into this section of the landscape. And what does that mean to you? Well, this is, again, where you start. It's the foundational layer. Before you go to build a decentralized application, if you choose to build one, you need to choose a blockchain. Choose something you're going to build upon. And there's plenty of options. There's general blockchains, there's hybrids, there's public, there's private, also permissioned or permissionless. There's also side chains that are being spun off of some of the main either public or private chains. And there is a new rising category of interoperability. These are blockchains that can cross over, communicate, and can interact with one another with ease. And so to me, the category to watch in this, depending on the usage of your decentralized app, is the interoperable blockchain. But while there's a lot of options, where do you start? So if you start up in the upper left with blockchains as a category and then down into public, the three leading blockchains that people are building on right now is Ethereum, by far the leader, followed by Tron and EOS. These are your three starting points. So if you're trying to build your first app, figure out where to go with the ecosystem for developers to really get some additional support, start here. But maybe you have something a little bit more specific, a different type of use case than general, and you want a more specific community. Look to Flow. Flow is a public blockchain that was developed by a company called Dapper Labs, and this is being leveraged very heavily around gaming and entertainment. Hedera Hashgraph. Hedera, also a public chain, is being used for a lot of decentralized applications. They launched in early September 2019 with going on 30 plus dApps in their ecosystem, and continue to bring in not just those from the outside world, but also at the corporate level. And Polkadot. Polkadot has just begun launching and testing out their mainnet, along with a few additional side chains and spinoffs, with a very big and growing ecosystem and the backing of the Web3 Foundation, furthering the standards and the development community. So companies to watch, I think this is key. Again, these are 4 companies to take away from. So 1, Avidado. Down in the bottom right-hand corner, nodes. These are very, very important to the overall structure of what you do. And you'll notice some big names in there: Infura, Near Protocol, as we mentioned, Bison Trail, many others. But check out Avidado. They're an early stage up-and-coming company that has a actual hardware node device that you can plug into your home and build a little bit upon. Definitely someone to watch. Blockstreet, when it comes to side chains, getting a lot of attention right now, and also a growing developer community. Flow, we already mentioned, and then Swarm in the bottom of the messaging box, as you need things to talk and communicate to each other. Messaging will be a key part of your application. Also, for those who may know, one of the biggest applications are their CryptoKitties. So CryptoKitties was actually built on Ethereum in its early day. It's also about crippled the Ethereum network due to how much usage it had in its initial days, and it has recently moved over to Flow. The Flow blockchain has been more optimized for gaming and for the type of load that a big game type application may use as well. So, scaling. As I mentioned, CryptoKitties had this, so there were solutions introduced in the world to change and to make sure that didn't happen again. So layer 2, left to right, layer 2 protocols or scaling solutions. This is, to me, I think, one of the most fascinating categories next to one we'll get to in a moment, because this is how we make things go faster. This is how we make things broad, and this is how we make our applications really leverage the power of decentralization or distributed in some other cases. So we've seen over $1 billion, which doesn't seem like a lot, but again, this is a new category. So we've seen over $1 billion US invested in this space. And looking at the layer 2, I mentioned Lightning Labs. So Lightning Labs came on the scene, and Lightning, what they've done, Elizabeth Stark, the founder of that company, has looked at how they can scale the Bitcoin blockchain, the Bitcoin network. How can they make this faster when it comes to transactions, when it comes to the sharing of information? How can they speed this up? And from that, they've learned a lot and started building additional toolkits and additional protocols off of that foundational thesis that they had. And all of this is live and available for you to test and start integrating. We've already talked about Near. Near plays a role in everything just about that we're going to talk about today. Next, you look at storage. Storage, distributed storage or decentralized storage, something you have to have, right? When you build an application, whether web or mobile, you are looking at cloud and you're looking at scalability of storage and how to get more and more and more, along with redundancy. This category is a can't miss. And you've got plenty of options, whether it's Storage J, it's Filecoin, it's IPFS, so Interplanetary File System. Can be a mouthful, but plenty of support and a great company there. 3Box, Infura, many others, and another company called Airweave. Airweave is a company that has also just raised a little bit of capital and has started kind of getting more attention, as their mission is to build not just a information technology company, but a storage company that specializes in forever storage. Something you never have to worry about running out. It always continually, naturally grows and grows. And behind it is a serverless web. So highly recommend checking them out as well. And as we move into the next category, compute. So now we've got our baseline, we've got our infrastructure in place. We know how we're going to get this thing to scale. We've got some storage so we can store things. Now it's time to compute. How do we take what we're doing and distribute that compute power? And there's plenty of companies like Microsoft and IBM that also focus on blockchain as a service. So again, focusing on the full package. But some I like to call out here that just focus on storage, compute, is Dfinity and Golem. Definitely two to check out. And now we move to probably one of my second favorites, as we're about to get to my favorite categories in this entire landscape, and that's oracles. Oracles, when most people hear this, have several different understandings or definitions. To set the record straight for you, oracles help, they're a third party that help bring data together and make sure that it's trusted and that the transaction is handled. So data gets from point A to point B and that nothing happens in between. And that it's trusted data and it's a trusted source as well. These are incredibly important. If you're doing anything around financial data, if you're doing anything around health, personal, whatever it may be, you need to make sure you have one of these companies that you're looking at or working with in some way to get that data, ingest it into your app, and make sure that it's trusted and hasn't been tampered with in any way, shape, or form. Again, when you're pulling from a third party. Check out Provable, check out Band Protocol. Chainlink is by far one of the biggest names next to Provable, who used to be Oracleized in this space as well. But Uniswap, Zap, all of them are well vetted and good for you to work with. We move on into this last piece of the plumbing, as I like to refer to it, and that's queries. That's on and off chain. So on chain being on the blockchain, off chain means you're pulling it in from an external source and adjusting that into your blockchain. So this is typical database queries, as we've referred to it in most areas today. Company checkout, as I've highlighted there, the graph. Contracts. So we've now got our infrastructure in place. We're scaling our application. We've got storage. We're computing. Now, let's start connecting some dots. Let's put some rules into this. Let's make sure this has a little bit more to it before we get to the front end. So on the contracts side, we have just under 100 companies spread throughout these 4 areas. Smart contracts. I won't beat this to death because smart contracts are talked about all over, but at its core, smart contracts provide your application simple rules and regulations. The if, then, this. What to do, what not to do. If this is the task and the task has been completed, release the reward for doing so. A company that's getting a lot of attention in this category, and one I definitely have spoken with, is Simba Chain. They've done a lot on the government level. They've done a lot at the enterprise level and some at the consumer level. If you're looking to get and work with a smart contract company, Simba Chain is where to start. Governance, this is the overseeing of your application. So blockchains by nature are decentralized in most cases. And so with that, you need some kind of oversight, some kind of rule and regulation. Governance comes into place here. And then the category I'm most excited about in decentralized applications, and something ArcBlock is highlighted and does very well, and that's identity and authentication. It's probably one of the most important categories next to Oracle's part of all of this process. And that's the idea around decentralized identity, and identities that can move around with you, that you own and you control where your information goes, where your identity goes. Authentication is a part of this because somehow we have to authenticate. And now authentication is changing. It's not just put in your simple 8-character password. It's getting more complex. We're dealing not just with your shopping, not just dealing with your emails, not dealing with your social media. We're dealing with finance. We're dealing with major health data. You want to make sure that's protected from an application or developer standpoint. You want to make sure you have the best and brightest in your category. So aside from ArcBlock, who I not only shamelessly plug, but also believe based on what I've had the chance to see, definitely check out Blockstack, Ethereum, and then Proxy, along with Beyond Identity, as we spoke about in the previous section. Proxy just raised over $40 million, and with Beyond Identity are bringing the work they've done on the physical authentication identity space into the digital world. Right now in 2020, we're going through a lot of accelerated digitization. They have repivoted their businesses to focus on that. And again, Blockstack, ArcBlock, and a few others, that's their core, is focusing on the digital side and doing it very, very well. And the last category, compilers. Now we've built all this, put all this together. We've got our rules and our regulations. We've got our identity, our authentication. But we're coming at this from 16 different levels in different languages. We've got to compile that. We've got to bring that all together so that it comes out on the other side in one single language. So there's plenty of virtual machines, like the Ethereum Studio, EOS virtual machine, Ren VM. There's plenty of virtual machines and environments to test your products up until this point. But then there's a few different coding languages like Solidity with Ethereum, that you want to bring all that in and use something like WebAssembly, as I have highlighted there, to compile it, compress it, and give it in this nice clean form so that we can actually build and release a real application with all of this stuff and give it to the world. And on the application side, we have just over 100 companies. Similar to blockchain, we've seen almost $6 billion US put into this category. And a few notables, APIs. We know what APIs do for most applications. In this category, not only do APIs bring data or additional support in from traditional apps, but also from decentralized apps. So plenty happening there. We've got device and wallets if you have some kind of tokenomics or digital collectibles or goods or assets that may need to be stored. There's plenty of companies, including ArcBlock, that play in that world. The web browsers. So I've highlighted Brave, who's seen massive growth in numbers and challenging Chrome along with other browsers as a de facto browser to be using. MetaMask, which is a browser extension and allows the opening of some of the and usage of some of these applications or wallets storage. Analytics, just like Google Analytics works for our web apps, and Mixpanel and others work for our mobile apps. Dune Analytics, along with a number of others, actually work for our decentralized applications. We want to monitor not just the usage, but also transactions. Where are things going and how are they continuing to move as our applications grow and scale? Market data, the very bottom, that's pulling data in from the markets. So you can understand what's happening, whether that's financial from the digital currency side or that's just general market information. And DNS, this is a new category just introduced recently. So domain naming services. Just like we have our GoDaddies or Namecheap and others, now we have DNS services that we can buy new domains that are specific to the world of decentralization. So .eth, for instance, for Ethereum. And these are not just web addresses that we put in, they also act as a transaction address where I can send Matt to his address, matt.eth, for instance, $20. I can send him a collectible. I can go to matt.eth and see his personal website. This is a new level of domains that we haven't seen introduced to date. Notable companies, Handshake, one that was recently acquired, but also all 5 of those in there are great places to check out and places to start. Now, developer platforms. If you remember in the very beginning, we looked at all this core, right, left to right. There's these group of companies, almost 50 of them, that sit on the top. And these companies, including ArcBlock, Blockstack, Liquid Apps, Dapper Labs, who we mentioned earlier, these are companies that provide all or almost all of the pieces of infrastructure we just went through. Call them your one-stop shop, where you can go in and you can start with Liquid Apps and you can build your application from A to Z with all the pieces. Click, 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 boom. ArcBlock, Blockstack, Dapper Labs, if you're looking to build a game. So the NBA, the UFC, many others in terms of world of sports and media and entertainment are working with Dapper to build those next level games. Take a look at the others as well. So if you want kind of the one size fits all and it just goes, here's your group of companies. If you want to pick apart and find exactly what you need for your particular use case, look towards that bottom in those categories, those 4 categories we went through. If you want to take the full challenge and go from beginning to end by yourself, you now have that roadmap to do so. All right. So all that being said, we just went through all the pieces. Where's this being applied? 4 main categories for you. 4 big key categories. Decentralized finance, or DeFi, also known as open finance or the future of finance. This is probably the biggest category of these that we're going to talk about today that's being spoken about all over the place currently. And why? That's because DeFi, or decentralized finance, leverages the power of decentralized applications. And it leverages it in such a way that is not just challenging, but opening new ways of how we think and how we handle our finance at the infrastructure to the consumer level. In early 2020, and just again recently, we saw over $1 billion US dollars locked away in value in these applications that people have put as collateral for lending or loans. So opened up a whole new market for those that are looking to get loans or to lend capital in different ways, for payments and transactions, so cross-border payments, for instance, to provide credit where credit doesn't exist, to handle lotteries, which we'll talk about in a minute, decentralized exchanges, to insurance, remittance, and even back office, looking at the future of work and how we handle invoicing, how we handle hiring and paying of employees, and so much more. So a few companies to check out, pool together around lotteries. Dharma, which is screenshotted there in the corner, allows you to start earning interest immediately as soon as you drop $1 or anything in there. Opium, OPYN, this is an insurance company. While all this is happening, this is a new way of challenging finance. We want to make sure that we do have protection when our money is being moved around or leveraged. Maple Finance, another company focused at the infrastructure level of the finance world. So as we move from decentralized finance, we look at gaming and entertainment. So the NBA is a big player in this space. Block Party, created by Mythical Games, Neon District. All of these are big games that are launching or have launched currently that you can play as a decentralized app. You'd have no idea, but they are built in a decentralized way, each from the beginning to end, or pieces of their application. Another is social media. Voice, Block One, who are part of the initial founders and also investors of the EOS blockchain, created Voice, a new type of social network. And this is also the category where we can see the most activity right now around decentralized applications, whether that be video games, that's non-fungible tokens, or digital collectibles, that's lottery like Pool Together, where everybody's a winner. It's esports, it's social networks, simulation, and more, which builds into this even bigger picture of the virtual economy. And the virtual economy is leveraging dApps even further and allowing for the creation of new dApps to create virtual goods. And as I said, an economy that's living and thriving, that seems endless, hundreds of billions of dollars in the very near future, where we're going to be seeing non-fungible tokens. We're going to be seeing the rise of collectibles and all of these things we've kind of teased about being used. Whether that's in a game like Decentraland or Upland, where you can buy real estate and not just buy digital real estate, but you can build an apartment and you can rent that apartment and you can have tenants coming in and out of that apartment. And now, not only are you making digital currency money, but actual converting that into real hard cash. Again, a new economy. We go back to 2008 and 2009, we saw the gig economy. Right? All of these new jobs that were created. The virtual economy is here and is coming to stay, and is going to be a new era of making money off virtual goods and services, along with marketplaces like OpenSea. Right now, we're already seeing digital farmers, generating $25,000 US a year, on the upwards of $200,000 and beyond a year, farming goods or selling or renting virtual real estate. So something to pay attention to. As we move into tokenization. So we've talked about finance, talked about gaming and entertainment changing, this new economy that's getting created around all of what we've just said and the power that dApps really have, going into tokenization. So tokenization, we're coming to a world where everything once or currently physical will become digital. And that everything digital will have a representation of a token in some way. Even us will be able to create these personal tokens or event tokens. So from a personal level, someone like Spencer DeWindy here, who's an NBA player that was tokenizing his NBA contract, allowing to get a little bit of capital upfront, while as investors that invested in him were able to profit off his performance. Or again, a personalized token where you can create the Kyle coin or the Matt coin. And from that, you can actually pay for our time or our service from a work perspective. So these are things that we're starting to see really start to take shape. There's also companies that are doing this for events and services. So for today, you actually get an event token, and that event token allows you into the event, and not only to it, but also you can go and buy a particular good, or you can get a certain collectible just for having that token as well. So look for this category to continue to rise, especially as we see more virtual events starting to come. So decentralized finance, we talked a little bit about. One thing I do want to hit on this is that this has been a lot of testing in progress. We've seen a lot of attacks, some good, some bad, some in between. Those we've seen millions of dollars lost, but then millions of dollars given back, really to show that this is a big, big opportunity, but also something we need to take seriously. That means when you're building in decentralized finance, you need to audit. You need to have your code checked. You need to not just do self-audits, but you need to have third-party audits. You need to work with insurance companies like Nexus Mutual or Opium and others to make sure that there is a fallback in the case that something does happen, because you're not dealing with tens of thousands, you're dealing with tens or hundreds of millions on billions. And as Joe Lubin has recently mentioned to me, trillions and even quadrillions of dollars in the near future. But while this is all said and good, we need a little bit more love on the interface side. There needs to be more focus on the user interfaces, because whether it's stable coins, it's digital currencies, it's central bank digital currencies that governments are developing, for us to get to use this at a mass scale, we need it to be easy. And we need it to look good and to be a smooth experience for all of us as well. So while all this is said and good, I want to look at the positive and negative activity. We're seeing a ton of different applications out there, but active usage, still not there. Daily active users, however, on the other hand, come and go, but are still only in the hundreds of thousands, not the hundreds of millions as we're seeing in applications. So what this spells for me and for you is we're still in the early days. This is a perfect time to really start beginning to build your application, learning the ins and outs, pieces you need, pieces that need to be created, because when this does start to get traction, we're not going to be able to stop. And we're already seeing the Apple Store and the Google Play Store start to introduce these dApps into the availability to everyday users. So I expect this trend to start to go uptick, but right now we're still very low on the usage, but you can see, again, active users wanting to have interest. So trends, what's happening this year for the first half, and I'll get to what's to come. We're starting to see more activity from Libra. We've seen not just a rebrand, but we've seen more companies start to join their association along with CELO, C-E-L-O, a competitor to Libra. So people are putting time and effort into this. And the thing about Libra is that Libra, similar to WeChat in some cases, or to Line in Korea and Japan, is that these companies have access to bigger and bigger ecosystems, and not just to people, but to more opportunities, whether that's into gaming, it's marketplaces, et cetera, large reach. Virtual economy, a company called Sononium Space, as I mentioned, virtual goods. In just only a few weeks, they sold over $400,000 in virtual land. This is, as I mentioned, a trend not only for Q1 in the first half of 2020, but going forward. We're going to see a lot more of this. We have corporates like Hyundai that are coming out with their first decentralized application to the public. We're seeing China's Blockchain Service Network, or BSN, come online, which is going to open a whole new world, excitingly, of decentralized applications. We're starting to see more money. We're starting to see more tests. We're starting to see more things happen. A company like Honeywell putting $1 billion worth of parts being tracked on the blockchain. And Ernst & Young, Consensus, and Microsoft coming together, joining forces with Baseline Protocol, bringing ERP systems. So now we're talking about the back office, the invoicing, all of that stuff that happens at the enterprise. That with SAP all onto the blockchain as a decentralized application for everyone to use within the enterprise. So looking ahead, we're going to see more activity at the scaling level. That layer 2 interoperability will become the standard. It will not become if then that. It will not be a choice. It will be a standard where you will have to talk. Your application, your blockchain, your infrastructure will have to talk throughout others. Decentralized identity, DID, I guarantee you're going to hear it multiple times here at DevCon. This is the category to pay attention to. Not only will it be important to your DApp, not only will it be important to your enterprise, it will also become a global standard for us. How we interact, how we represent both a physical, a digital, and in between worlds as things take shape. More APIs will come. My prediction is that at least 10 large enterprises will roll out decentralized applications for their consumers and internally by the end of the year. We've already got 2. I'm looking for 10 more to make for a total of 12 by the end of the year. Digital currencies are going to continue to take shape. We're going to see more activity and more integration into dApps. Digital assets and collectibles. There's no shocker there. See more big launches coming through to the end of the year. Decentralized finance will really start to take off as retail, not just physical but digital, and gaming come to their rescue to help booster it up, really help harden that infrastructure from their lessons learned and enter the early days of mass adoption. User interface will start to improve on the second and really the end of 2020. And the virtual economy, as we came to see it and talked about it moments ago, will more than double by the end of the year. So look for those billions of dollars to double by the end of 2020. But where should you start? Where should you begin? Where should you start investing, building, et cetera, in these? First and foremost, building blocks. We need more building blocks. There will not be one player to rule them all. We need more infrastructure and more improved infrastructure. And as you build, or as we build applications, find the holes, build new building blocks to solve for those. We do this as a community. We do this as together. That's how this all pushes forward. Not just because it's decentralized, but because of how the future is moving. Identity and authentication, again, a key area to play in. Security and data management. What happens to the data that you're collecting? What happens to the massive amounts of data as we start to go to the edge? We start to look at the potential of the Internet of Things, light up more devices, bring more of that information, and also our information as consumers into one location. How can you monetize that and also protect it in some way? The future of work. I don't necessarily mean the future of us all working from home or working remotely. I mean the future of work. How do we handle things internally in the workplace? Where is the role of applications, or where's the need for more applications and things in this decentralized manner? So from the back office to our potentially virtual or physical offices. Marketplaces. Talked about a lot of things. We need a place to sell them. We need a place to transact. We need a place to engage and interact. Marketplaces are going to have a huge opportunity here in 2020 and beyond. Fan and customer engagement goes without saying at the gaming level. How can we increase that fan engagement? Give fans and customers better and more exciting experiences for being loyal or engaging with us. Tokenization. Physical to digital is going to happen. It's starting to happen. How do we increase it? The idea of digitization for physical goods is here to stay, and it's not going away. It's only just going to improve and accelerate. So another area of opportunity for you as well. With that being said, I'm Kyle Ellicott, co-founder of Topio Networks. Super excited to be here today at DevCon, and a big thank you to Matt, to Robert, to the entire ArcBlock team, and to you, the audience listening in. Had a great time. Happy to answer any questions, and we'll have my contact information along with websites. So if you do want to find any of this, we have all of this available along with the blockchain infrastructures, my white paper on Libra and how Libra could be or will be potentially the largest decentralized application to date. I'll share this with everybody afterwards as well. But with that, Matt.
Great. Thank you so much, Kyle. It's I know for everybody in our audience, this is really useful information and actually pretty powerful. I mean, that closing slide there in terms of the opportunities is that's the future, right? If you're in the industry and you're thinking about decentralized apps, you're thinking about blockchain, you're thinking about identity, these are where the opportunities are. And you know, one of the things at DevCon that we're really wanting developers to find and to see is what are the opportunities for me? Where can I, potentially make money? Where is business happening? So really finding those opportunities. So I think that's really powerful to see. One of the questions I did have for you, just kind of based on seeing the presentation, is I wonder, based on your experiences, and especially along the lines of user interfaces, Is it something where people are really looking for these DApps or services to work like today's applications, like a Google sign-on, like a Facebook sign-on? Or is it, in fact, we're starting to see a move towards a new type of experience? I mean, are you seeing any kind of trends in the industry from what you know?
Yeah, so I think it's a combination. So from applications of today, we're just trying to make things work, right? So we're kind of testing a lot of that out. But from a mass market adoption standpoint, they need to fully function and act and work like applications of today. There should be no question. It should just look like that. But in terms of where things are going, yeah, it's so much more seamless and if anything, takes away or strips away some of that resistance that we have in current applications, right? Where you have to type in a password, 3 different times, you have to log in through, multiple social medias, then you have to manage all, it should just be almost to one click. So I think what's happening right now, like I said, is we're just trying to make things work. And then the next step is to make it feel and interact and engage like a typical application. So no one notices or even thinks about it, because that's the way this should be. And the next step that some people are pushing the bounds with, as I know ArcBlock and others are working on, is, stripping all of that away and making it just a simple interface. Just one click, boom, you're in, do what you need to and get out. Right now, we live and breathe on applications. That's not going away. If anything, it's just where they live, right? Whether it's on our phone, it's on our computer, it's in our face. That's just the medium's going to change, but it's just going to get easier.
Definitely. Well, Kyle, thank you so much. Thank you to Kyle Ellicott. Thank you to Topio Networks. Everybody, I encourage you to check it out. Topio Networks, and again, Kyle Ellicott. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Matt. And thank you to the audience. Thank you, Robert and ArcBlock. It's been an amazing conference, and I'm looking forward to checking out everyone else's presentations and going from there.
All right.